guys, it's February 25th, 2018, and this is your episode 135 of At Percussion. I'm your host, Casey Angelosi, and with me, as usual, are my co-hosts, Megan Arns.
Hello.
And Laura Black.
Hi.
Ben, how's it going?
Hey, doing well. How are you?
Good, thanks. It's Ben Charles, everybody. So, Megan, you're on the road. What are you doing?
I am. I'm on the road with an electroacoustic chamber ensemble called the Switch Ensemble. And I formed it with a group of friends at Eastman about 7 years ago. And we're doing residencies in upstate New York at Bard College, Cornell, Ithaca, and Buffalo State. So we're at our first stop. We had a concert last night in Woodstock, which was really cool. And then we've got a concert at Bard College tonight. So we're premiering works by composers at these institutions, students and faculty members. And also sometimes it's giving the students a chance to compose for electroacoustic ensemble for the first time. So we're working with them on their electronics and things like that. So,
have you guys been playing all these 7 years, this whole time? Have you stayed playing?
Yeah, we have. We've definitely done. We usually do 2 to 3 big things a year. We were at a composition festival in Spain 2 summers ago. That's the only international thing we've done. They went to Darmstadt. I didn't go to that. But yeah, we've been playing consistently the whole time. And I mean, we started when we were students, so that was the easiest because we were all together. But now, slowly, people have left and gone on to other things. And now we're actually, as of right now, everything's always changing, but as of right now, the members are in California, New York City, Virginia, Missouri, and Switzerland. So,
holy cow.
Yeah, it takes a lot of planning. We've talked about long distance ensembles a lot on here. And so it's a lot of those similar things, a lot of planning, a lot of preparation beforehand. And yeah, but it's nice to come together, and especially when we're at university residencies, because we usually have space and time. And that's what we have here at Bard. We just did, I'm sitting in the recording studio right now. We just did a recording session and we had all morning to do that. And so it's nice to have this time together.
You told the recording studio, hey, can we do At Percussion podcast in there? And they were like, wow,
exactly.
We'd be honored.
I should have requested the fancy mics.
That's the most I've ever heard Megan talk about this ensemble she's been in for 7 years, and we've been doing the podcast together for well over 2 years. Thanks, Megan. That's really.
I've definitely talked about it before because I remember when we were at Avaloc. Remember when I was at Avaloc and we recorded 6 episodes or something in 8 days or something? I guess
so. No, that's right. That's true. You're right. Well, you guys, we have a big variety of guests on the show, as you know, if you listen to the show regularly. And one of the things we try to do is get artists who are at various stages in their career. I think it's great to get people while they are younger, or maybe while they're still getting established, or in the case of our guest today, they just got back from winning a second place prize at the International Percussion Competition in Luxemburg as a duo. So it's great to have 2 students on the show who are out there working really hard and kickstarting all their happenings. They're students at the University of Miami right now. So there's a little connection to Ben there and to our last guest, or 2 guests ago, I guess, Svet Stoyanov. So you guys, this is Ksenija Komljenovic and Kiril Angelov. How are you guys doing?
Hey, good job
guys.
with the pronunciation.
I know. I only had to practice it 12 times in front of everyone.
In front of a mirror with a metronome.
Well, Ksenija and I had an interview. She actually interviewed me at PASIC, I don't know, 4 years ago or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, a long time ago. So it's nice to finally, get to return the favor a little bit and see that you both are doing so well. So congratulations on Luxembourg. And maybe it'd be great to start with just telling us a little about that competition.
Well, the idea for us to participate in the competition kind of came last summer. Kiril and I have been playing together in various chamber ensembles in the past 3 years, mostly at the University of Miami and mostly actually including Svet. And when the opportunity for the competition to come up came, we just decided that we're going to buckle down and do it. And it's been a very long process. This has probably been the biggest personal sacrifice, at least on my behalf, the choosing not to travel anywhere for 6 months and not see anyone and spend New Year and Christmas in the practice room, literally, and not have a single day off. But it certainly paid off. It made us grow a lot. We got much closer. I never knew I could yell at someone so much in a practice room.
That's good.
That counts for me too.
Yeah. But it's been a super interesting experience, and just, flying, going to a different place and meeting all these wonderful duos from all over the world, seeing how people interpret music completely differently. Altogether, it paid off so much more than just the prize. So we're very lucky that we got to do it.
So I wanted to ask, because we mentioned Svet, and actually something you just said on when Svet was on, I told my favorite Svet story, which is about how you have to be uncomfortable to grow. And I was wondering if both of you could just share some of your favorite Svet stories, both comedic or non-comedic. I'll tell a comedic one after you guys.
Favorite Svet story? Do you have one?
Well, wait, I'm thinking like the most recent one is definitely not going to be a favorite one, but it was a very useful one. It was when we realized that the competition is coming in less than 2 weeks, and we were still kind of struggling with one of the pieces of the program. The program, by the way, was around 2 hours of music. So that was the second round piece. It's called Gold Rush. You guys probably all know it. Mm-hmm. That was the piece that we kind of underestimated the most, especially me. I have a tendency to learn the pieces like in the very end, before the actual event. So that was the lesson, the coaching that we have when Svet entered, and we were supposed to play the whole piece for him. And we didn't play the whole piece for him. We had like a couple of pages left. And basically he was not so happy about it, to say at least. And yeah, it's not really, a story, but I remember that was the most recent contact that I had with him that basically pushed me so much that I had to learn it in like less than 3 days, because he kind of gave us a deadline. If you don't know it by that time, you guys should not go. And he was not mean or anything like that. He was just really trying to help us. And that helped me a lot. Ksenija was almost done with this piece, but I had to learn the majority of the piece then. So it's not really like a comedy story. Definitely not. Yeah, I didn't really feel like I'm in a comedy coaching with him. But it pushed me so much that basically our next coaching on that piece was incredible. I mean, we played the whole piece. He was happy. We were happy with playing it and being able to have 4-hour coaching with that piece with him. After that, not comedian story. So yeah, I remember that the most right now. Probably if I think a few minutes, I'll remember other stories. But if Ksenija remembers something right now, she can say it. But that's the one that I remember most recently.
I'm trying to think. I think I have the boring part about me is that I usually do my work on time, so I don't get to experience a lot of those. This story was, it was great because Svet's timing with pushing us and telling us that we need to pull miracles out of our backsides in order to, pull this off was great. But I must say that my experience with him has mostly been really amazing when it comes to music, and the only precursor to that has been just to be prepared as much as I can so I can accept information. But I've seen him not be pleased with things and push us, but I can't say that I've had anything crazy. I think it's mostly your generation that has great stories that we keep retelling.
So I have some stories I can't tell on the podcast, but my favorite Svet story that that I've never actually, I can't believe in like 150 episodes I've never told this, is there was one night Svet practiced late, all of us practiced late, and he went by, I don't know if he ran into our friend Mike, and Svet was like, hey, I'm going to go grab dinner. Do you want to come along? Mike was like, yeah, sure. So they like walk, and they start walking. There's not really all that many places to walk to from campus. So Mike was like, I'm not really sure where we're going. And they ended up at the convenience store on campus, and Svet, for dinner, bought 2 moon pies and a bag of Doritos. And so later on, when all of us heard about this, we're like, Svet, what are you eating? That's like what a 5-year-old would have for dinner. And his rationale was that the moon pies were the only thing that had less than 100 calories.
The only thing.
It was actually a healthy choice.
He has great musical advice. Perhaps not the same for nutrition.
That's funny. Well, you guys played Gold Rush on the program on the 2 hours of music, but could you share with us the other pieces that you learned for the competition?
Yeah, well, okay, so let's go round by round. So the first round was choice piece, which we chose to be the Toccata by Anders Koppel, vibraphone marimba, and there was a set piece that was composed especially for that competition. It's called Astral Trip. It's basically marimba, wood blocks, 5 tom-toms, vibraphone, bunch of gongs.
So 2 setups that had mallets in them.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the first round. Second round was, as we mentioned, the set piece was Gold Rush. Everyone was playing Gold Rush. And then we had one limited choice piece, which we chose to be Gyro by Tomer Yarif. And one free choice piece, which chose to be Basakale by Anna Ignatovic. That was semi-final, and final round was one set piece. It was a Luxembourgish composer. His name is Alexander Mullenbach. The piece is for 2 percussionists and a string quartet. And then we had a recital up to 35 minutes, I think. We chose, and in that recital we had one Baroque piece that we had complete, like, free choice to choose. We chose Toccata and Fugue by Bach.
In D minor for organ.
In D minor, yes. And then the rest of the program was Book of Grooves, the fourth groove. What else did we play? And the tango by Astor Piazzolla, the second movement of the tango suite.
So altogether 9 pieces, 3 of which were set. And the most interesting thing of that for me was that for the third round piece, you had to learn your parts, and then you had 2 1-hour rehearsals with the string quartet over there, and you had to perform it. So it was a lot of pre-planning that had to be done, and we punched in all the music into Sibelius so we could listen to it and analyze it, so that when you go into rehearsal, there's no questions asked. You just tell people what they need to do, and we all discuss it, and we go through it, and that's it.
Wow.
Yep.
I had a question, just a little review of the pieces that you talked about. On episode 118 with Katarzyna Miszka, we talked about Anna Ignatovic, and on episode 122 with Joint Venture Duo, we talked about the Jacob TV Gold Rush piece. And it sounds like you had an interesting experience, and they told us quite a bit about their experience in preparing that piece. Could you tell us a little more in depth about Gold Rush? Because I've never actually seen the score for it, but just seeing the setup and knowing how the piece goes, it seems like a very large undertaking.
Yeah, well, Joint Venture was a big lighthouse for us, because just watching them play solved so many problems for us. The piece is, in my opinion, very deceiving, because it sounds like it's all fun and games, but it's actually a logistical nightmare. And even though you're just playing some pentatonic scale, on your mallets, you have to be hitting blocks and drums and use your legs and so on. So it's actually pretty hard. And most of it is in unison, which makes any change of, any unintended outcomes really loud and apparent. Well, it was just a lot of logistics that needed to be figured out. The piece did not offer enough guidance. It doesn't tell you drop mallet, fix mallet. It's like you have to play 5 notes on a vibraphone and a crotale at the same time and hit a gong. So how are you going to do that? And for us, it was really a lot of trial and error, a lot of Svet watching us and saying like, oh, that looks ridiculous that you're running left to right. So change that. And just adjusting things, I played vibes with a very small tam mallet for a good chunk of the piece so that I could achieve everything. But yeah, you section it out and you practice everything that is hard, and then you try to put it together, and then you fail and then repeat. So basically that was that. Yeah. But these guys did a great job. Joint Venture really did a killer version of it. And for me, at least, I mean, they were the thing that I relied on whenever I had a question that needed answering.
Yeah, they're really special, I think.
Yeah. They were there, right?
Yes, they were listening to the competition.
They were to the competition. They went to the competition, so we got to meet them.
They actually helped us with one section of the piece that we had a question for, and we asked them. They suggested their way. I don't know what we ended up doing. Again, I forgot right now, but they were really helpful in terms of.
Did you have to provide like a very detailed equipment list for what you needed for that, or did they just tell you here's what you're getting?
There was an equipment list that they provided for what they can kind of offer, and then we had to, much earlier in the process, in fact, even before we had the chance to start practicing every piece, we had to send the entire equipment list that we need. And then once you get there, before every round, you go and look at everything that they have, and they write down every tom that you need, every stand that you need, and so on, and try to provide you with that in rehearsal. It was less frequently possible. So for Gold Rush, for example, the only time we had the full setup in Luxemburg was on stage.
Wow.
In the practice room, which is, we had 1 hour only prior to performing it. It was like not all instruments. So you play a little bit on stands, a little bit in the air, and so on. A little bit of airplay.
Yeah, we couldn't do a run of the piece before we went on stage.
So those are really interesting things that luckily performers, or hopefully, don't get to experience otherwise in competition. It's like adrenaline killing you, and you're like, oh, I hope I remember this because I played it at 10 days ago.
Yeah. Sure.
Wow. Did you guys memorize the whole program?
No, not really. We had most of the choice pieces were memorized. Gold Rush was partially memorized, but we still had scores in front of us. The Astro Trip, the set piece for the first round, was not memorized. We had like scores in front of us, and we were reading the majority of the music.
Mm-hmm.
So it's mostly setup pieces that we had stuff in front of us. Of course, we tried to memorize as much as possible, but it's easy when one is running from one instrument to another to run in a wrong direction, which we actually saw someone else do, and it was really funny because it was on the opposite side of the stage that the person ran and then ran back to an instrument. So stuff happens. But yeah, I mean, we had to have everything planned out, the scores and everything, and then, of course, we tried to play as much memorized as we can.
Sure. Megan, you have something for us today, right?
I do. I wanted to talk a little bit about not necessarily study abroad opportunities, but opportunities for students to live or work or study in a different country. And this is something I kind of think about this time of year when students are looking at what to do next. You have students auditioning for graduate schools, applying for jobs, applying for internships. And something I always try to include in that conversation is, what about going abroad? What about having an opportunity or, having an experience outside of your home country? And, the two of you obviously are studying in a country different than what you grew up in. And I don't want to say it's less common for Americans to do that, but I think especially where I teach in the middle of the country, I don't know, a lot of my students have not been abroad before. I also think that as music students, it's a little more difficult to fit a study abroad program into a 4 or 5 year degree because the course load is so intense, especially for music ed majors. And at least in the schools that I went to, study abroad wasn't necessarily encouraged in the music program. It wasn't like, hey, we're taking this trip, you should come. There's nothing really relevant, at least I felt. And I knew I wanted to study abroad. So I took a trip, but I planned it on my own. I went with a group that was in a different university. So anyway, because of all of those reasons and the time of year that it is, I just wanted to share a couple of opportunities that aren't necessarily in music, but I think are great opportunities for students for maybe a gap year in between graduate school, or even not in between graduate school, but just for something to do next after school. So the first one is the Peace Corps. So I think we've all heard about the Peace Corps. Their kind of welcome message on their website is find your passion project. Peace Corps service can be the first step towards a career or the continuation of a life's work. Sharpen your skills in a field you've always loved or challenge yourself with a new opportunity. Volunteers go to work every day excited by the opportunity to make change. So those can be, in the Peace Corps, you can work in sectors such as agriculture, community economic development, education, environment, health, youth, and development. So even though music is not included in there, you can think about different ways that it could be incorporated into one of those sectors. For example, education, could look for a music education program. Youth and development, that would also be an easy one to incorporate music into. So for Peace Corps, the kind of what of Peace Corps is that it's pursuing something that you're passionate about, whether it was what you studied or not, or it's just something that you were interested in. Who's the Peace Corps for? It's for U.S. citizens that are 18 or older, so really it's open to anyone. I kind of thought of Peace Corps before as for younger people coming out of college, earlier in their career, but one of my best friends was in the Peace Corps. I went to visit her in Cameroon about 10 years ago and learned a lot about this program. And there are actually a lot of senior citizens that participate in this program, a lot of retired people or even couples who will retire and then move abroad together and work in the Peace Corps. So I thought that was really cool. So this can be for an opportunity for undergraduate students. And in addition to it being employment and you're receiving a small stipend, there's a program called Peace Corps Prep, which is an academic partnered certificate program. And when you complete the program, you receive a certificate and an insight for applying for Peace Corps service. So this would be like for people who are 18 years or older, but there's also special programs for undergraduates. So to start to prepare for this before you graduate from school. So there's something called Peace Corps Prep, which is an academic partnered certificate program that helps you build skills that you would need to participate in the Peace Corps after school. And there's also something called Peace Corps Campus Ambassadors, which are student ambassadors who serve as peer-to-peer outreach experts on undergraduate campuses, so you can actually work with someone before you go and understand. There's also, for graduate students, there's financial assistance that's available to returned Peace Corps volunteers. So that's really excellent. That's a program called the Paul D. Coverdell Fellows Program. So that could be something where after undergrad you participate in it and you work for a few years and then you come back and you have financial assistance towards your master's degree. So where is the Peace Corps? You can serve in over 60 countries in Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, Central America and Mexico, Eastern Europe, Central Asia, North Africa and the Middle East, Pacific Islands, South America. So a very, very, very large portion of the globe. And you can kind of pick your preference of what regions you're interested in going to. However, you are placed in one of those after you apply. So if you want more information about the Peace Corps, go to their website, peacecorps.gov, and check that out. The second one of three is the Fulbright program. So what is that? It provides grants for individually designed study research projects or for English teaching assistant programs. So this would be a little bit less of a passion project and more of a specifically proposed research program, research proposal. And these take place during 1 year, during the academic year, in a participating country outside the U.S. So while you're there, if you're awarded a grant, you work, live, and meet people from the host country, and kind of have the chance to incorporate yourself into the culture, and there's usually a partner organization that you're working with for your research project. The grant lengths and the dates vary country to country, but this is really good for recent graduates, master's and doctoral candidates, and young professionals. There's also something you can apply for as a faculty member as well. And this also works not just for U.S. citizens, but there's a grant program for non-U.S. citizens to come to the United States. I have a former student from Jordan who's actually on one of these in the United States right now, studying music therapy at New York University. So that can also be really wonderful. However, those, I believe, are not for research, but for actual study. So from the U.S. side, it's not for actual study. It's for a research project, not necessarily towards a degree. For music, that can mean studying with a particular artist, performer, or teacher. But it has to be a research project. Where can you do this? East Asia, Europe and Eurasia, Middle East, North Africa, South and Central Asia, Sub-Saharan Africa, Western Hemisphere. It's a little bit more narrow of where you can go, although it's still, the country cannot be on the list of countries you're not supposed to travel to as U.S. citizens. So it kind of varies based on the stability of governments in certain countries. So, but there's an updated list on their website. This, you have to apply pretty early. Last year's deadline was October 6th, and that would be for the following year. So you basically have to have your application turned in an entire year before you would go. So you really have to plan early for this one. So if you're a junior now, you should start thinking of a research project and where you'd want to go and making contacts in that country, learning a language, whatever you need to do as part of your proposal so that you're ready to submit in October of next year. And then that would be for the year after your senior year. They also have a program called teaching that includes teaching English. And that brings me to my third opportunity, which is teaching English abroad. And I have way less specific information about this simply because there are so many companies that help place you. And I'm not even going to start to name them, and I don't have much experience with this, so I don't want to steer people in the wrong direction. But I do know that this is a great opportunity. And if, for example, if you're a musician or a percussionist and you're interested in the music of a particular culture, a particular region, and you want to go, this could be a great way to have a job while you're there and then find a teacher to study with. So it's definitely more independent. It's not necessarily a program, but it is a huge possibility. This can take place anywhere. I know specifically that English teachers are in a high, specifically American English teachers using that dialect are extremely, they're looking for people, especially in Asia. So I have a friend who lives in China, and she said, oh, I could just quit my job and I could just teach English. I could teach English, 18 hours a day, up to 20 hours a day if I wanted, and it's good money. So if you're interested in just living abroad, taking some time off, or studying music of another culture, that could be another example.
I have a friend doing it in Japan and loves it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and teaching music too in Japan, but hired as an English teacher.
Right. And it's a great way to get, in the same way that we're familiar with in the United States is that, if you want to move to New York, it's going to take time to get to know people. So, a lot of times that's why people will go to school there first, make connections if they want to end up there. So it's a similar thing, is moving there, making contacts, meeting people, and kind of assimilating yourself. So anyway, those are three things that people can look into. I don't know if any of you have anything to add to that, but I just think, sometimes we get in this habit of, especially as teachers advising undergrads or even high school teachers advising people to go to music school, it's just, undergrad, master's, DMA, teaching job, or undergrad, master's, orchestra job. And we kind of have these specific pathways. And it's okay to take a break and live somewhere else, and to not be in the majority, to feel what it feels like to be in the minority, things like that. Learn another language, etc.
I've definitely said many times, don't hesitate to slow down. Don't hesitate. If you're double majoring, it might be a better idea to take your time, get 2 different degrees, get 2 different master's degrees or just one and go do something else, go work for a while, come back. But I think it seems like the one thing we know since we're young, the one thing that is who you are is you're a student.
Yeah.
So you graduate high school. Oh, wow, I'm not a student anymore. I don't know what to do. I don't know who I am. Bam, go to college. You graduate college. I don't know who I am anymore. Go to master's. And you just, like you said, you go undergrad, master's, DMA, straight through. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you guys know you have master's degrees. They just flew by.
Yeah.
2 years is such a short amount of time. And I mean, especially at the pace we move in school, like we were talking about y'all's teacher in Miami, Svet, just like pushing you and pushing you and pushing you. It's like you move so fast in 2 years. So yeah, Megan, I'm totally with you. I mean, I've told people more than ever, like, slow down. Don't be afraid to like do it well and slower,
Yeah. And like, and it's okay to go through like that if that's what you want to do. And like that's to an extent, that's kind of what I did also. But I think it's also, for me, it's like, yeah, it seems like that's an easy way to burn out.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I don't have a DMA. I know everyone on the show knows that, but maybe our listeners don't. But the plan was to maybe eventually go back and get one. But I'm so glad I finished a master's degree and then actually finished a second master's degree because I was feeling that thing I just described, like, oh man, being a student is easier than being in the real world. So after a second master's degree, I got hired at the Concord University as an adjunct and worked there for 6 years. And I thought, I'd work there a couple years and then I'd go to a DMA program and like do the traditional track. But instead my career got going and then I traveled all sorts of places. My career took me to those places and I'm really glad to experience those places like Megan is describing. So whatever, if your career isn't just doing that for you, then you do it yourself. It's valuable. You're going to learn a lot about the world and it's going to make you just all the wiser for whatever your career is going to be. Yeah.
And I think it's especially important, right now in the time of our country and, meeting other people and exploring the world and being open to, meeting people who grew up in a different way than you, I think can only make you a more open, accepting citizen. And I think our country would be in a better place if more people did that, personally. But
yeah, of course.
Do you have something to add, Ksenia?
Amen.
She's like, Americans.
No. I mean, we came here because we both knew, even though we didn't know each other, but we both knew separately that one of the most wonderful things about this country is that it's a big melting pot and that, in fact, you can come to America and experience the world, not just America. Mm-hmm. And, coming from a small country that's very, in some ways, very monochrome when it comes to this diversity. It's been a wonderful experience to be able to come here and just meet people from all over the world. And you learn a lot about yourself. You learn a lot about life. And this all translates into music beautifully. So it's been a wonderful experience. And I would definitely recommend everyone to get out of their comfort zone, get out of their homeland once at least for a substantial enough amount of time so that it's not a vacation, but actually, figuring out the ropes of your life somewhere else. And then, they would see that they're going to learn a lot about everything. Of course,
I realize that not everyone might be in a position in their lives to do that or financially be in a position to be able to do that. But I just wanted to mention that all three of those opportunities that I mentioned are free and include a stipend. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot, Megan. Very cool.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Well, speaking of this, I think it's maybe a convenient time to bring up a little news item. And like on this podcast, every time we bring up a news item, by the time this airs, it's not really going to be new anymore, but it's definitely new and very active at the moment. But those of you guys probably know, if you follow this sort of thing on Facebook, Innovative Percussion just dropped one of their major artists, like one of their big time signature artists. And I'm not going to try to make like a big deal about this and say too much, but I just wanted to say that I think I'm proud of them for what they did, and I'm proud to be an IP artist, and I think that they, whether you agree with them or not about the particulars, they took, it's a big sign of integrity to take that over was potentially a huge financial loss for them. I mean, they potentially are going to lose a ton of money doing this, and they still chose to do it. And, I don't know, there's lots of maybe ways around that. They could, salvage as much of the finances as possible, various ways. But I also want to just say to anybody who is saying to Innovative Percussion, there's just been a few comments on the various posts, and they have said, why would you drop an artist just for these comments? And I would just say you need to dig a little more. So you need to seek out some of the other comments, not by Innovative or by the particular artist, but you need to dig out some of the comments by some people. So yeah, you need to dig a little more. So anyway, I just wanted to say that.
Just to follow up Casey's thoughts in a hopefully not very political way, Apple has come under fire at several points in time for their environmental policies, because if you think about it, environmental policies for a commercial institution, you're probably losing money on these sort of high-strung thoughts of protecting the environment. And there was an investors meeting where investors started sort of pressing Apple CEO Tim Cook about this. And he said, we do a lot of things for reasons besides profit motive. We want to leave the world a better place than we found it. And he says, if you want me to do these things only for return on investment reasons, you should get out of the stock. When we work on making our devices accessible to the blind, I don't consider bloody ROI. So it's kind of interesting to think about, these companies, of course, they want to pull a profit and be very successful in that way. But at the same rate, if you're only driven by pulling profit, it's sort of I think a meaningless existence.
Yeah, right. Well, and once you're successful, like, what do you do?
Yeah.
It's, I mean, how much money is enough until you get to start? In my opinion, is spending your money the way you want to.
Yeah.
I mean, Eric Johnson at Innovative is, it's a successful company. And of course, people will tell you, it's not as big as Vic Firth and maybe ProMark or something. It's like, well, yeah, sure, but it's probably big enough for this single owner,
That's one of their
great
top selling lines of mallets easily, I think.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, they're doing just fine. So, anyway, I just wanted to, put my 2 cents out there. And just tell people, no, this isn't about opinion and censorship, but it is about actions that have happened, actual things. So because I mean, I'm not a fan of censorship at all. I don't think anything should be censored.
Right.
But I think we have to actually protect people against harm, actual harm. So
right.
I don't know.
No, I think it's good that you brought that up, Casey. And I think for kind of applauding IP for making the right choice is that, they're in a position of power with, by being able to choose which artists they represent. And, I think this is a great message from them saying that we support all our artists as musicians, but also as people. And we want them to stand for the same ideals that we stand for, or not the same, but, everyone on the same page, right? And so I think this was a huge statement by them because they're saying this is wrong and we know it's wrong and this might hurt us and that's okay because the right thing to do is to drop this person. And man, kudos to them.
And the thing I want to add, you said this is wrong. And right now, there are 10 different definitions of what this is. And all I want to say is if that all you think this are those little specific posts and comments and opinions, which, by the way, are not this person's opinions alone. There's a whole movement of anti-feminist, pro-men. And I mean, there's this whole, it's actually kind of a conspiracy theory is what it is, because it's totally founded in BS. But anyway, there's a whole little movement saying anti-women and putting forth this idea that actually men are the ones who have been suppressed and treated poorly throughout the course of like human history. It's total bullshit. But anyway, this is some of that in these little opinion posts, and I'm saying that opinion, so what? There's some more there, and you can find it if you want to. It's not like it's some top secret that I heard only from the artist or from the people in IP or whatever. Like, yes, I mean, I hate to even say it, but it's it's true.
But you're right. Do the research and, find it on your own. That's, yeah.
Yeah, there's just some testimonies on Facebook in response to this. So anyway, it's not like they just dropped this artist for these opinions.
Right.
I think it's really wonderful that a company stood up and showed their own integrity and what they believe in. And in my experience, I did my doctoral research on the perception of female percussionists. And throughout the course of the research, I stumbled upon some worldly renowned performers and educators, females, who then shared their stories of how they had experiences with, again, worldly renowned soloists and educators who happened to be men who discriminated against them solely based on the fact that they were women. And it is one thing, of course, to have your own opinion and to generalize based on gender or whatever else, but to understand that you are a renowned artist and that you have profound impact on other people, and to then share these opinions and shape other people's lives in a negative way, understanding that it is negative shaping. I think it's important that we identify these people and that they are encouraged to perhaps be enlightened in a different way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
To be more accepting of others. And yeah, it's just, in my findings, it was really incredible to learn how many people dropped percussion because they met an older person who told them, male or female, who told them, you know what, because of this thing in your life, how you were born, where you were born, what you believe in, you should not do this. And people took that because they're vulnerable and young. So standing up for something like this, I think, is very important, and I applaud to them.
I know, obviously, Patty Mimi, who we talked to a long time ago at this point, is had that experience with auditioning at a university, and the male professor said, well, we don't usually take female students because they're just usually not very good, and which is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's just sorry, I'm laughing, but it's because it's just that dumb.
Yeah, but Ksenija, I know one of the biggest names that you talked to in your research was Evelyn Glennie, and I haven't actually read your dissertation yet, but I was wondering if you could share some of what you found about Evelyn Glennie's career as obviously, quite frankly, the foremost percussion soloist in the world, and what her experiences were with this.
Well, the interesting thing is you can find out a lot about her online, of course, but the intricacies of her growing up I think made sense when the whole story gets put together. So she grew up in Scotland, and the thing that she mentioned was that she went to an inclusive school, which meant that her music school was made in such a way that it would support any hearing impaired young person who wants to study music, vision impaired, in a wheelchair, and so on, which is truly beautiful. And she said that in her first studio, and this is the only interviewee who shared an experience like this. In her first studio, there were 6 girls and 1 boy. And when she moved to London later to become a full-time percussion student, the situation was reverse. And afterwards, when she had, established a career and started traveling, she realized that it's a thing, quote unquote, to be a female percussionist. It's not like you're a percussionist, all of a sudden you're a female percussionist when you go abroad, when you go to certain European or Asian countries and so on. So I think the fact that she grew up in an environment that was so open to this, and it was no big deal for a girl to be playing, it was very normal, and that she had soloists to look up to, the principal timpani of a local orchestra, of the Scottish orchestra, and so on. These were all ladies, and this was all, several decades ago, which, for example, I cannot say now for my own country. There are no principal percussionists that are women or ever have been. I think this all had a profound impact on her. But her career, she said, also has been different than most people's because she's a soloist. And to quote, she said she's been looking at the world through a keyhole and not being part of any organization permanently or group. She has always been treated as a single person and therefore has never had luckily any negative experiences. So, yeah, I think she did a fantastic thing, and thanks to her environment also for making that possible for her when she was young, with
right.
all the things that she had to face. So it's amazing.
Where can we find your dissertation, and when are you going to turn it into a book?
Yeah, right. That's why my dissertation's unavailable now for another year, because it's being turned into other publishable material.
Excellent. I look forward to reading that.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a Facebook question from Alyssa Resh, and she asks, do you have any tips for new young duos consisting of current students about how to find paying performance opportunities? I found that it can be difficult to market my duo in this area when myself and my duo partner are still young and quote unquote unestablished in the music scene. Would be interested to see if you have any thoughts on this.
I think the tip that we definitely can give right now is something that we already experienced. For the rest of the question, we can only suggest things just like every new duo can. We are also, by the way, new duo. We played for like 4 or 5 months, like actively together. But I think what we can definitely say realistically is that every new duo should definitely do a competition like that. Should go somewhere where you can meet other duos, you can meet the president of the competition, you can meet the jury, you can meet people who are gathered for a week or more to do only that, to listen to that, to answer questions, to see people who you usually can't meet whenever you want, can't talk to them whenever you want. So that's definitely something, definitely a tip that we can give right now because we already experienced it. If you want to add something to it, but I think realistically speaking, that's definitely something that everyone needs to do, even if the competition doesn't turn out to be successful. That's definitely a way to start. Like a lot of careers started from competitions, so I think definitely that's one of the most useful ways for artists to promote their art and their work and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very difficult question, and we keep asking those older and wiser people than us who already have established the career, like, hey, where did you find that switch between being a young performer to being an established performer? And it seems like those lines are a little bit blurred. For sure, this seemed like a great idea to us, and the timing was good for us because there's not going to be, this duo competition is not going to happen for another 9 years. But you can do a trio in 3 years there if you want to. It helps you because in some ways that becomes your own recommendation letter, in my opinion, so you don't necessarily need someone to vouch for you all the time. You want something that's hopefully an unbiased, opinion of several people, and then that gives you some sort of leverage. But otherwise, from what I've learned, it's a lot of really hard work, a lot of, in the beginning, working pro bono, being really nice, really helpful to other people, establishing connections with composers and other performers, and offering your services kindly so that you could kind of get put on the map and just establish your network to be strong enough so that you could then have, negotiations about actually getting paid for what you want. I'm not sure that, it's like that in most career paths, I'd say. A lot of people have to do an internship, an unpaid internship, before they go out and get a job. Is it the way it should be? Should somebody's efforts be unpaid while other people's are paid? That's a completely different topic. But we'd say, go at it, and hopefully, if your heart's full of grit and you got it, you believe in what you're doing, success is bound to come your way. Perhaps not at a pace that you expect. It's going to be quicker or slower, but you gotta go for it.
This is a topic that Nancy Zeltzman has kind of talked about in terms of like you can't do things for money or financial gain, I guess, and I mean especially in the arts. And we keep talking about like this magic switch of like, oh, one day I was a student performer, and it just simply doesn't work like that. And even just as like a solo artist trying to do clinics, most clinics I don't really make money. Now, if someone called me and said, hey, I want to pay you $3,000 to do a clinic, of course I would take it. But at this point in my career, for the most part, it's like, hey, if you can cover my flight and hotel, I'd be happy to come to a clinic for you. Or if I'm just traveling for personal reasons and I can, I'm in Tampa, can I come by and do a thing at USF or something like that? But I think that Casey's talked before about you can spend money or you can invest money. And at this point, investing money is a lot more important for me to be doing. And like I think the competition is a great example of that. Like, okay, like you did like a GoFundMe to help you with your travel expenses. I'm sure you weren't flying first class. I'm sure you were staying at a very modest sort of place and eating on a budget. Yeah. And yeah, you spent some money, you got some help along the way, but now you have that on your resume and people are more likely to call you for a paid engagement. And I think maybe someone like Casey that's more established in a career at this point, Casey's probably not going places just for the cost of the flight. But yeah, I mean, it's, there's a path to walk down and you can't try and skip ahead steps. You have to be a student paying for school first, and then you sort of get into your semi-professional realm where you're paying for some stuff and some people are paying you for some stuff. And then eventually you're on the other side of the fence getting paid to do entirely getting paid to do things.
Yeah, man. Well said, Ben. You said investing. I thought you were going to tell us to invest in Apple.
I'm probably smart, but
yeah, good point. No, I think we've just heard Ksenija's description, Ben's description. So yeah, for Alyssa's question, we just heard two versions of what I would maybe call like indirect route to money. Yeah. So Ben just said, sure, you do these clinics and you kind of build up your name, and then you start getting invited to clinics and you get out there more. And in the case of our duo here, you win a competition, and you do another competition, you build your name, all that is an investment. And then eventually you maybe get paid gigs, but you also get like a job. So sure, maybe Ben doesn't make money on his clinics, but what he does make money on is his job there at Tarleton.
Yeah, yeah. And there's like the John Cage 10 rules for students and teachers, and like I think it's rule number 1 is the only rule is work. And I think it's like you can't chase after something specific. You just have to do what you're going to do and know that eventually something will come. And it's funny, like actually I hadn't even thought about this before, but I was just thinking about like I had Casey out to FAU when I was teaching there in 2011 or something like that. And I won't say how much we paid Casey, but I know that if I called Casey and offered that amount, he would probably laugh at me at this point.
Oh, I'd blow you off, dude.
But yeah. I mean, it's like, like your rate, increases as you get more and more established. And at that point, you were sort of in the beginning stages of being established. And now you have your full-time tenure track job and, all this stuff that, kind of one thing leads to another.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, a thing that I wish I knew before was the actual importance of aggressive marketing. And in many ways, we couldn't afford to go to this competition on our own. So we kindly asked people to help us out, and we had over 30 donors, and we're so lucky because that flew us across the ocean and we got to do this. And I think, in situations where that you have an artistic vision that needs a little bit of a financial push to be, brought into life, don't be afraid to ask for money. But also throughout your career, make sure that you don't also establish yourself as a person who works only pro bono. Mm-hmm. So, of course, it's one thing to be kind-hearted and to be well-intentioned and to want to perform music for the sake of music, of course. But for young people, I have found that most of us have been trained in such a way to observe music in such an altruistic manner that we have to completely disregard the conversation about financial worth of what we do And so eventually what happened to me for the first time when somebody came up to me and asked me, oh, how much would you ask for this engagement, speaking engagement or playing engagement? I was like, huh? I get asked. How do I do this? And then I had to run around and ask for advice. I think it's a good thing to teach students to start thinking about it early enough, to understand how the market works. What are the things that you can ask for? And what are the things that you can kindly ask for support? You know?
Ksenia's little comment there it reminded me of, there was one time, and it's, again, I guess this sort of shows what we're talking about. I was asked by a friend to perform. She had like this monthly concert series at like a library in Miami or something like that. And so I did like this concert basically for free. And after the concert, there was literally like an 80-year-old woman that walked up to me and said how much she had always loved the sound of the marimba, and her birthday party was going to be next month, and could I play at her birthday party? And I mean, it was clearly someone that, you know, had a good amount of money, and she asked me, she basically said, like, whatever you ask, I'll pay you. And so, like, I kind of had to ask around. I asked some people that had string quartets what they thought an appropriate rate was. And I think, honest to God, I could have asked for $2,000 and they would have paid it, no question. I wasn't bold enough. I think I asked for like $200 or $300, something like that. But yeah, I mean, you never know.
Yeah, exactly.
And I know Robert Van Cise established his career on, he was playing some I think it was like contemporary Japanese repertoire at some church, and there were two people in the audience, one of them happened to be some big name concert promoter that liked what they saw, and that was a big step in his career.
Yeah. And I'd like to add to what Ben said earlier, just about myself. I will still play places for free, and I'll still do commissions.
Well, Casey,
for free.
I've got a gig for you then, man.
Well, it depends. It depends on the timing and the cause and how interesting and or fun I think it's going to be. And sometimes you'd be surprised. I tried to give someone a commission fairly recently for free. I said, it's okay, really. I'm happy. They're like, no, I have to pay you for this. They gave me $2,800. It's like, oh, wow, thanks. Cool. Okay, great. I mean, it's just interesting. And like you said, you never know what you're going to find and what it's going to be. But I think you just follow what feels right. And for Alyssa, if it feels right to try to get paid for these gigs, try. But I think also don't hesitate to just play. And the most important thing, of course, is looking for that indirect route to like bigger money. I think that's important. I was just going to add, it came to my head. We were talking about Stephen Stuckey, the composer, in our percussion lit class a few weeks ago. And I had just transcribed a little something from an interview of his, and he gives a bunch of cool points to advice to composers. And I think this pertains to players as well, but just paraphrasing it a little bit. His first piece of advice: don't be one, meaning a composer, unless you absolutely have to. Otherwise, you won't have the stamina, drive, ambition, etc. It's not an easy profession. Even at the very top of it, there is no glamour. So only if the music is its own reward, maybe like get a real job, is something he says. So I think that applies to players as well. Like the reward has to be its own in the activity itself. Otherwise you won't have what it takes to like make it to those really high levels where it can turn profitable or into a good job or whatever. So anyway, well, guys, I think we've done great, and we've probably gone over time just a little bit, but thanks so much for joining us on 135. Ben, Laura, and Megan actually had to go, so she had to step out. But yeah, Ksenia and Kiril, thank you so much for being with us, and congratulations on what you did in Luxembourg. And we cheer you on, and keep up the great work.
And tell Svet hi.
Yeah.
Watch his diet.
Yeah.
Watch his diet. I have a funny Svet story. I saw him at PASIC, and he was like buried in his phone, and I told him, "Hey, nice concert." He like totally blew me off. It's like it was like, "Oh, thanks, man." And, like didn't even. Yeah.
That's every day. That's every
I think
day.
he forgot who I was, or didn't care. Maybe he did know. He's like, "Oh, it's Casey. So what?" Yeah. Anyway, thanks everybody. Have a good week. We'll catch you on 136.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, guys.